inside Venezuela's prison of madness. If you think the world is dangerous, wait until you hear what happened inside La Sabaneta. Like, comment, and subscribe, because this story will follow you long after the screen goes dark. The night it all began, the streets of Maracaibo were quieter than usual. A heavy blue haze hung in the air, the kind that made the city look like it was holding its breath. Patrol sirens cut through the silence, weaving between abandoned market stalls and shuttered shops. Officers were chasing a black motorcycle that darted through the streets like a shadow. On the back of it sat a man whose name every detective in the region knew, Daniel Lobo, a mid-level smuggler who had risen too quickly, too loudly, and too dangerously. Witnesses claimed the chase began after gunshots were heard near the docks. But by the time officers arrived, the shooter was gone, a body lay face down in the mud, and only one clue remained. A silver chain engraved with Daniel's street name, El Fantasma, the ghost. Daniel had built a reputation that made even seasoned criminals keep their distance. Not because he was the most violent or the deadliest. No, it was because he was calculated. Daniel never panicked, never raised his voice, never left witnesses behind. And that terrified people more than anything else. Tonight, however, for the first time in years, he was running. The motorcycle slipped through a narrow alley, tire screeching, before losing control on loose gravel. Daniel flew, hit the ground hard, and rolled into a chain-link fence. By the time he pushed himself upright, officers had tackled him, pinning him against the metal as flashing lights washed the street in cold blue. Daniel El Fantasma Lobo, the lead officer said, breathless. "You're under arrest." Daniel didn't resist. He just lowered his head, exhaled through his nose, and whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen tonight." Those were the last words he spoke as a free man. La Sabaneta prison, the name alone carried weight. Some called it a furnace of chaos. Others said it was a forgotten world within the world, where hope went to die and fear learned to breathe. Even its exterior radiated a sense of ancient danger. Cracked concrete walls towered over worn-out metal gates, riddled with dents from decades of riots, storms, and desperation. Daniel Lobo arrived in the back of a transport van, shackled and silent. He had been sentenced faster than anyone expected. The prosecution claimed the evidence was overwhelming. But detectives whispered among themselves that something felt off. The crime scene was too clean, too arranged, too convenient. Still, the judge didn't hesitate. 25 years. As the gates clanked open, a guard leaned close to Daniel and said, "You should have kept running." Inside, chaos moved like a living organism. Inmates paced the courtyard with predatory eyes. Others huddled in corners, watching everything, saying nothing. Makeshift fires burned inside metal barrels. Faded murals covered the walls, a mix of religious symbols, names of the dead, and messages too smeared to read. Daniel quickly realized that survival here wasn't about strength. It was about alliances, information, leverage. And Daniel had leverage, more than anyone knew. Within days, rumors spread. Some inmates recognized him from the streets. Others whispered that he wasn't just a criminal, he was a strategist. A man who controlled smuggling routes with precision. Someone who had influence outside the walls, and possibly inside them too. But the most dangerous rumor was the one Daniel didn't start. Some inmates claimed that Daniel had been framed by a powerful figure within the city's underworld. Someone who needed him silenced. Someone who feared the secrets Daniel carried. The prison hierarchy shifted almost instantly. People who once ignored him now watched him closely. Some wanted to recruit him. Others wanted to eliminate him before he grew too comfortable. On the fourth night, Daniel woke to the sound of footsteps approaching his cell. His grip tightened. A shadow moved across the damp concrete floor before stopping right outside his bars. "You didn't kill that man," the voice said quietly. Daniel froze. The man stepped into the dim beam of hallway light. He was older, with sharp eyes and a calmness that didn't fit the chaos of La Sabaneta. "My name is Aristides El Viejo Morales," he said. "You need to come with me." Daniel hesitated. But something in Morales's tone felt less like a threat and more like an invitation into a deeper truth. He followed. Morales led him down a corridor and into a small abandoned storage room. Old boxes were stacked against the walls. A broken fan clung to the ceiling by a single screw. "This prison is not what it looks like," Morales said. "There are things happening here that the outside world doesn't understand. And what happened to you on the night of the murder, it's connected." Daniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Morales continued, "You weren't the only one set up. Someone is orchestrating events both inside and outside these walls. And you, whether you want to or not, are already involved." Daniel stared at him, the weight of each word tightening around him like a rope. "Why tell me this?" Daniel asked. Morales reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, metallic, and familiar. A silver chain. Daniel's silver chain. The same one found at the crime scene. "But this," Morales said, holding it up, "was found inside La Sabaneta 2 hours after you arrived." Daniel's breath stopped. If the chain was inside the prison, how did it end up at the docks? Who planted it? And more importantly, why? Before Daniel could ask another question, Morales leaned in and said, "You were never the target, Daniel. Not yet. But after tonight, you will be." The room seemed to shrink around him, the air thickening with dread. And then Morales added, in a whisper sharp enough to cut, "The real nightmare hasn't started. The rise of the ghost." For the rest of the night, Daniel stared at the silver chain lying on the floor of his cell. Its metallic gleam reflected the dim blue light slipping through the barred window. He replayed every detail of the night at the docks, the shadows, the screams, the moment he found the body. But no matter how many times he went through it, nothing made sense. Someone had placed his chain at the crime scene, while it was also inside La Sabaneta hours later. Someone wanted him to burn, but someone else wanted him to stay alive long enough to understand why. The prison awoke at dawn with its usual chaos. Guards shouted orders, metal doors slammed, and the courtyard filled with noise, arguments, laughter, tension simmering under every breath. Daniel took his place among the crowd, aware of the eyes watching him. Some curious, some calculating, some ready to strike if given the chance. Aristides El Viejo Morales walked beside him like a silent shadow. "You need to understand something," Morales said quietly. "In this place, influence matters more than strength. And you, with your reputation, can become someone very important." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not interested in prison politics." Morales laughed, a short, dry sound. "That's exactly why they'll come for you." They walked toward a far corner of the yard where a group of inmates sat beneath a rusted metal awning. Men with scars across their faces and crude tattoos etched across their arms. They were known as Los Padrinos, a faction that acted as unofficial gatekeepers. Nothing happened in La Sabaneta without them knowing. Their leader, a broad man nicknamed Toro, lifted his gaze. His left eye was clouded white, relic of a past fight no one dared mention. Morales nodded in greeting. "Toro, we need to talk." Toro smirked. "About the ghost?" The nickname felt heavier here, less myth, more omen. Toro stood, towering over Daniel. "Word is someone wants you erased. Fast. What did you do on the outside?" Daniel maintained eye contact. "I existed. That's all it takes in my world." Toro studied him for a long moment, then motioned for him to sit. "Tell me what you know." Daniel did. He told them about the chase, the body, the chain found at the scene. When he mentioned the second chain, Toro's expression shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. "Two identical chains," Toro said slowly. "That means someone close to you is involved. Someone who knows your habits," Morales added, "and someone who has access to this prison." Daniel felt the weight of that truth settle in. Whoever set him up wasn't guessing. They were following him, watching him, maybe even walking beside him long before his arrest. Toro leaned forward. "There's a man in here. Calls himself El Registrator, the registrar. He handles information, smuggling routes, deals, secrets. If someone brought something inside the prison for a setup, he would know." Daniel asked, "Where do I find him?" Toro smirked darkly. He finds you. The day passed with rising tension. A rumor spread that a knife had gone missing from the kitchen. By afternoon, Daniel had caught at least 3 men staring at him with the kind of focus predators use before striking. Every sound felt sharper, every corner darker. By evening, the prison felt like a chessboard, and Daniel was the piece everyone wanted to move. As night settled, the lights flickered, plunging the corridor into shadow. Daniel walked slowly back to his cell, muscles tense, senses alert. He reached a corner turn and stopped. A figure leaned against the wall, arms folded, wearing a calmness that didn't match the atmosphere. "You've been looking for me," the man said. Daniel didn't need to ask his name. El Registrator looked nothing like the dangerous informant Daniel had imagined. He was thin, with clean hands, neatly trimmed hair, and eyes that moved like a scanner reading every detail. More accountant than outlaw. More observer than fighter. "You know why I'm here," Daniel said. El Registrator nodded. "Someone paid to have your chain delivered to a guard. Someone with money, influence, and a very specific intention." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Who was it?" The registrar tilted his head. "That depends. How badly do you want the truth?" Daniel stepped closer. "Enough to risk everything." The registrar sighed, as though expecting that answer. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. "I warn you," he said. "This name, it won't bring you comfort." Daniel unfolded the paper. His heart dropped into his stomach. The name written on it was someone Daniel never expected. Someone he trusted. Someone who had everything to gain by removing him from the equation. Mateo Lobo, his younger brother. The silence between them felt like a scream. Daniel closed his fist around the paper, crumpling it. His chest tightened with betrayal, disbelief, and something darker, a rising storm that threatened to consume everything. El Registrator continued calmly. "Your brother paid heavily to ensure you wouldn't return to the streets. I don't know why, but he wanted you erased." Daniel's voice cracked with quiet fury. "He's the one who killed the man at the docks." The registrar shook his head. "Maybe. Maybe not. But he wanted your chain there. And he wanted you here." Daniel took a slow breath, the walls closing in. His own blood had set him up. Before he could speak again, Morales appeared at the end of the corridor, face pale, urgency in his stride. "Daniel," he said, "we need to move. Now." Daniel frowned. "Why?" Morales looked him dead in the eyes. "Because someone paid for more than your arrest." He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "They paid for your death." The corridors suddenly felt colder, darker, and Daniel realized the truth. Whatever was coming was already inside La Sabaneta. The fall and the phantom. The alarm siren blared across La Sabaneta, echoing through concrete corridors like a metal scream. Guards shouted orders, inmates ducked for cover, and the entire prison seemed to tilt into chaos. Daniel ran beside Morales, pushing through the crowd as doors slammed and boots thundered across the floors. "Someone tipped off the yard factions," Morales said breathlessly. "They know about you. About the setup. Someone wants the job finished tonight." Daniel's mind raced. His brother's name burned behind his eyes like a brand. Mateo, the kid he grew up protecting. The one he fed when their parents couldn't. The one he treated like a son more than a sibling. Mateo had always resented Daniel's reputation, but betrayal? This was different. This was calculated, cold, final. A guard sprinted past them, yelling, "Sector C is compromised. Weapons missing. Locked down in 30 seconds." Daniel felt the air tighten. If the prison went into full lockdown, he'd be trapped inside with the people hunting him. The corridors were already flooded with noise, shouts, footsteps, the clanking of metal against metal. "Where are we going?" Daniel demanded. Morales didn't answer. He turned sharply into a side hall, then entered a narrow maintenance tunnel lit only by a flickering strip of blue light. The walls dripped with humidity, and old cables snaked along the ceiling like veins. "We're going to the chapel," Morales said. "Neutral ground. Nobody starts a war there." They weren't 10 steps in before shadow moved at the far end of the tunnel. Daniel froze. 3 inmates stood blocking the exit, one holding a sharpened pipe, one clutching a piece of broken mirror, the last holding a wrapped cloth concealing something heavier. Each one stared at Daniel with a hunger that made the air feel poisonous. Morales whispered, "This isn't random." They were waiting. Daniel scanned their faces. None had personal grievances with him. None belonged to factions he'd crossed. This was a contract hit. The man with the pipe stepped forward first. "El Fantasma," he said, voice gravelly. "Your brother sends his regards." Hearing it spoken aloud made the betrayal feel like a blade to the ribs. The first attacker lunged. Daniel dodged, slamming him into the wall with a force powered by panic and rage. The pipe clattered on the ground. Daniel grabbed it and swung, knocking the second attacker back before the mirror shard could reach his neck. The third man pulled the wrapped object, a kitchen cleaver, from the cloth and charged. Morales moved faster than Daniel expected. He tackled the man, grabbing the cleaver arm and twisting sharply until the weapon fell. But another sound filled the corridor. More footsteps. More shadows. More hunters. Daniel grabbed Morales. "We can't stay here." They ran, turning the corner as the tunnel filled with roaring voices. The prison no longer felt like a structure. It felt alive, a beast closing on its prey. The chapel door appeared at the end of the hall, its wooden frame chipped but still intact. Daniel burst inside and shut the door, pressing his back against it as Morales shoved a stack of chairs in front. Inside, flickering candles cast shaky light over faded murals of saints whose paint had peeled under years of neglect. Rows of benches were scattered, some broken, some standing like tired soldiers. Daniel paced, heart thundering. Why would Mateo destroy everything? Why would he want me gone? Morales lowered himself onto a bench, breathing hard. Because he wants what you built. The routes. The contacts. The reputation. You didn't realize it, but you became a myth on the streets. You were careful. Controlled. People listened when you spoke. Daniel swallowed. That was for survival. Morales shook his head. People don't care why legends form. They only care who stands in the light. And your brother wants that light. Daniel looked toward the small window above the altar. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the bars. A distant explosion rocked the building. The chapel door shook violently. "They're breaking in," Morales said. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Not to pray, but to decide. He was done running. When the door cracked open and figures poured in, Daniel stepped forward, gripping a broken bench leg like a weapon. The first attacker charged, but Daniel struck him in the shoulder, knocking him backward into 2 others. Morales fought beside him, moving with practiced precision. The battle was frantic and brutal, fists colliding, bodies crashing against pews, the chapel echoing with grunts and gasps. But Daniel fought like a man with nothing left to lose and nothing left to fear. One of the attackers yelled, "Finish him. Mateo wants his head." The name lit a fire inside Daniel hotter than rage. He forced his way through the crowd, kicking one man aside, slamming another into the pews, until the final attacker stumbled backward and fled. Silence fell. The chapel floor was scattered with groaning bodies. Morales leaned against a pillar, exhausted but alive. "You're becoming something else," Morales said quietly, "whether you want to or not." Daniel exhaled, chest heaving. "I don't want to be a legend." "But legends aren't chosen," Morales replied. "They're forged." Before Daniel could respond, the chapel door burst open, this time by guards, not inmates. Their guns were raised, their faces stunned at the scene inside. Daniel dropped the broken bench leg and lifted his hands. It was over. Or so he thought. 3 months passed. La Sabaneta changed. The factions shifted. Violence dropped. And Daniel Lobo, the man once marked for death, became something else entirely. A stabilizing force. A negotiator. A symbol. Not because he sought power, but because he survived. Survival in La Sabaneta was its own kind of authority. One evening, as Daniel sat alone in the courtyard, a guard approached him with a sealed envelope. "No sender," the guard said, "but it came from outside." Daniel opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo. A body, face down. A silver chain lying beside it. His brother's chain. Daniel lowered the photo, a cold calm spreading through him. The message was clear. Mateo was gone. But someone else, someone outside La Sabaneta, had finished what Daniel never started. And the signature was unmistakable. A chain. A ghost. A warning. Daniel looked toward the prison wall and whispered, "This isn't over." Because legends don't die. They evolve.